please welcome to the stage the founders and co-directors of Alaris, Sean Richards, James Leckie, and Matt Samble. So we have a roving mic moving around the room, so if you want to ask a question, put your hand up, Boyana will come around to you.
Well, I was just going to start by why did you start the company?
Well,
how did it happen?
so for those that haven't heard the backstory, Schoolbox started out as I could build something better offhand comment when I was reviewing lots of LMS systems back in 2002, and so that's really how the product started. But Sean, do you want to answer how the company started? Sean loves this story.
I've told some people this story today, so I'll try and tell you the quick version. We were building websites together. We came together through other ways, and we were building websites for schools, other businesses, web applications, and Schoolbox wasn't Schoolbox. It was James's project that he'd built on the side, and in 2009 the three of us merged our three separate businesses and formed our company Alaris, and as part of that James brought the portal into the company, and we sat on it for a while, and we weren't really doing much with it. We had 5 customers, and 5 became 9 or so, and then I think we were at about 20 customers, and we were building all these websites, and we'd grown as a digital agency to about 14 staff, and we realised that that wasn't a particularly great business model, and that we had this amazing product and opportunity that we had 10 schools, 20 schools using and wanting us to develop, and it was only driving about 20% of our revenue at the time, and we had 14 staff full-time. And so we made this really, really difficult decision sitting in the boardroom one day that we were going to pivot the company and focus exclusively on Schoolbox. And this was like the obvious turning point for us. So it was called Schoolbox then, but yeah, the reality of the situation is that all the money that we needed to pay our staff was all coming from other web development, and what we thought was going to be a staged approach to migrating off web development and onto Schoolbox happened much faster than we could have controlled. So we lost our biggest customers first, and we went into cash flow crisis. So there was about 5 months that year that neither of the three of us took a wage, and we were just keeping afloat. I think there was some week we were managing our cash flow week to week, and there was one week where I think we were down to about $4,000 in the bank with 14 staff full time, and it was pretty nerve-wracking, but it was incredibly challenging, and we pulled through that. And 12 months later, as we looked back, we retained all of our staff. The whole team had survived, and we'd filled that revenue gap entirely with new business with Schoolbox. And we met as a team, and we just we said, well, what's the next step? Because from here we're going to grow. And so we hired our first teacher, and yeah, really the rest is history from there.
Hi. Firstly, thank you so much for the last 2 days. It's been great, especially networking with everyone, so it's been a fantastic 2 days. What I'm asking is about customizations. Often we see presentations and you realise that there's probably a customization in there, and just wondering, and I understand that there's a tension between doing work for them and at a cost and how everybody else can share it, but if you've got an idea of how you can, or how we can profit from the customizations that are happening. I know they go into the product eventually, some of them, but other ones, they may be great ideas that we would like to partake in as well, but how that can happen.
Yeah, I think that we're doing that. I mean, many of the customizations, as you suggest, have made it back into the core. Where we see that they may or may not have, where we've brought people out, like Walter last year presented the EOTC system up on stage, and that was like a customization that we wanted him to share. So we're trying to do that more and more. Have you got anything else to add to that?
Yeah, so I mean the line between custom and core is a really fine line. And generally, if it's something unique that stands alone as your own thing, it is custom. And if it's something that's core, it's inside the product, it's changing the workflow of the core product. In terms of how do we get involved in custom works that might be going on with other schools, if we see something happening in the forum and a few schools band together, we can do things as customizations for a few schools. We do things like that, and sometimes they get together on the forums. Is a good place to see that happen. The other thing I think with the customizations is that we do look for opportunities. So sometimes our account managers, if they hear 3 or 4 schools asking for the same thing, we will share the invoice across all 3 schools. Rather than billing all 3 schools the same amount, we'll try and share the cost across all 3. That happens quite a lot. And lastly, I'd just say that keep an eye on the release notes, because there's a section in the release notes that is called custom. And we often get, after we've released a custom feature, a few schools calling up and saying, we just saw this customization, how do we get it? So just keep an eye on those release notes, and if something goes in there that you see that you might be interested in, just give us a call.
Also, if there are any customers that have had custom work and they want to share it with the rest of the community, obviously, you could post that in the help centre and share that information, or come to us and let us know that you're happy for us to share that, and we can try to facilitate that. There's also a bit of an IP thing there, like sometimes, yeah.
Hey guys.
Hey Tim.
I just wanted to get on the mic. No, but I actually did have a question too. So you had a stated goal yesterday to get into 1,000 schools, so nearly a 10-fold increase. Can we just get insight into the risks that you've talked about for your current schools and how you plan to mitigate those risks with that growth, if you've considered that?
What would you see the risks being?
Well, I'm kind of asking you what you think they are, but I mean, one of the risks you can foresee as a customer is that great diversity you can get kind of messy. You can get, if you go to Asia, you go to Europe, you go to US, you'll get a whole lot of different requests from all those schools, and they'll kind of make the software so complicated to use that it becomes unusable, I suppose. I talked about that with someone today. And just the capacity to still keep focusing on the product as opposed to just focusing on marketing is another risk. And the capacity to still engage with people too, I suppose, on a, you do that really well on a personal level. So there's a few little risks that I've seen, but I'd like to know if you've considered them.
I think that those
just to get off
been,
the mic.
Been with us for a while, since when we were 10 customers and now we're 140 or something like that. We're still sitting up here on stage taking questions. We're still doing what we were doing from when we were just 10 schools. So I think that culture of being honest and transparent will stay and remain. I think that that's really important to us. We are a product-centric company, so we'll always be focused on the best quality software and keeping it simple and keeping it usable. And I talked today a bit in the vision about not building a massive product that does everything for every marketplace, for every person. When we grow, we're going to be looking at very targeted market segments that relate to our current market segment. For example, we're not going to go and turn Schoolbox into a product for corporates or for tertiary or something like that. We are going to stay a K-12 focused product. That is our niche and what we believe we're strongly representing, and we want to continue to be in that marketplace. So although there is lots of opportunity and lots of growth, it's not going to, for us, change the actual vision of what we're about building. We're going to stay building that same K-12. We're about teaching and learning. We're about building a quality product, and we're about being honest and upfront and sitting on front of the stage in front of you all. So that's going to stay the same.
No. How did you feel comforted by that?
Do you want a hug?
I wasn't lacking comfort before. I just think it's an interesting thing to consider going forward.
Yeah, I really think that James covered it with his first statement, that it doesn't feel any different to what it did when we were tenfold behind, and yeah, exactly. I think it just means more people that we're interacting with and how we manage that at scale. And I mean, the reality is that as leaders, we can't know everyone in our community. That's a sad fact, but it's a reality. And so there are people in the room that still will call us directly, and that's the way that will always be. And then there are people, as we grow into those new numbers and new markets, where they won't do that, and that's okay. And I think that won't change. Yeah, that's right. They'll have relationships with different people within our company, and so we're not looking to step out of our responsibility and our relationships with everyone that's here and that's been with us on that journey. But yeah, I don't think that's obviously not something that can personally scale. It doesn't mean that we don't want it to. It just means that we need to train up the people under us that are going to represent us moving forwards to those new faces, to make sure that they uphold the same values and the same position and the same culture that we have grown on. So yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I think that we've really focused on trying to instill that in our people, and that's why they're all here today as well. And hearing us speak in this way obviously has an effect on them.
It's just more people to hate or love my animated GIF presentations.
Next question. Do we have other questions in the room?
Don't get this opportunity very often.
Oh.
G'day guys. In a competitive LMS market, what research are you doing into other products to help improve your product?
Okay, so with, I guess, the marketplace, there's a couple of things that we look at, and I talked a lot about this today with the feedback that we gather, and really we look to our community to guide us. That's our primary, point of for information. Having events like this, we learn so much about what is the current trends, what are the current struggles, what are your problems, and that gives us the insights we need to create a great product and innovate and be ahead of the curve, just listening to everyone speak today. So that's one of our big key things. Secondly, we do keep an eye on the competitive products. We look at what they're doing, we look at what the features that they have, but it's not necessarily our main focus. I talked about the 3 parts of value this morning. Obviously, our community is one part, strategic is another part, and new sales and customer acquisition is part of that as well. So for us, I guess we're looking more to innovate and not so much look at the competitors. We need to make sure that we're aware of them, but we would like to be out the front leading more often than not. And to do that, we need to be more closely aligned with you. And so that's why we have these events, I guess, to get that information. Obviously, the forums is a big part of how we do that, and also we're talking about usage data, gathering that. We're also talking about hiring teachers is a big one. We've hired over the last year 4 teachers. They've come on board and given us great insight. They sit now with the developers, and every day the developers talk to teachers about what they should be building, what they should be doing next. Our teachers are an amazing resource. They're knowledgeable and experts in the field, and they give us great insights. So having them in-house has made a massive difference to what we can achieve and giving us insight. So we really appreciate having them as a development team. But now we're talking internally about reorganising those teams, and actually we see teachers as being part of our development team. They're actually part of the process of how we design, implement, test. We want them to be there day to day, every day with the developers while that work is being undertaken. So we see that as a big part of how we build and keep ahead of everyone. How's that? Good? Got one down here, up there, up the back. It's going to be the shortest.
Just wondering about the Cami product you mentioned was going to be integrated this morning. Is it possible to integrate that into the portfolio?
So what was the product you're asking about? Cami?
Yes.
Cami. So without looking too far into the future and promising anything today, Cami certainly does offer lots of opportunities to use it outside the context of just our current assessment workflow. In particular, I would like to see it used as a classroom component, as an e-portfolio component. Potentially, we could also use it as an assessment type. Some of you are familiar with OneNote's OneNote Classroom style system, where you upload a OneNote worksheet and it distributes it to all the students. With Cami, we could potentially do the same type of activity where you might upload a PDF worksheet and the students can complete that using Cami, and that's their submission online, and you can obviously annotate and comment on their Cami document inline as well. So there's lots of exciting possibilities with utilising Cami throughout the system. Certainly just replacing Crocodoc is not the end of what we think we'll be doing with Cami in the future.
Yeah, no, we envisioned sort of like what you were talking about there, but thinking in terms of the children being able to perhaps photograph their work or something and annotate themselves and upload to e-portfolios.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I agree that there's a whole lot of opportunities there that we can use with a great drawing tool to take use of tablets and surfaces and things like that. I think Cami's potentially can open up a lot of opportunities like that. We'd love to hear more sort of use cases like that. We obviously haven't thought of everything, so if you've got ideas, we're happy to hear about them in the forum. And once you start using it, I'm sure there'll be plenty more.
Thanks.
We have time for probably 2 more questions.
Just a question about the other LMS systems. There's currently one travelling New Zealand foretelling the end of Synergetic and Schoolbox's relationship. I know a lot of people here use Synergetic.
Sure.
I don't know if you've been visited as yet. Where are you at in ensuring the future relationship between
James just said be careful. No. The reality is like, we've sat in the conversation with Synergetic as a long-term partner, and the outcome of that conversation was that nothing was going to change. So obviously we're still running our Synergetic development instance. They're still patching it. Annalie, who they sent to represent them here today in this over the last 2 days, when I spoke to her as well, she said, yeah, like she sits on the executive team there, and she said, yeah, like the rhetoric inside the organisation is that we still support Schoolbox. It's still a great system. The development is still progressing. All of these types of things. So from our perspective, the only thing that's actually changed is that we don't share sales leads. And obviously that was a real benefit for both of our companies for the last few years, where we were able to share that intelligence in marketing and sales and obviously grow each other's businesses. And now that's just awkward. So it hasn't had an effect on our product, our roadmap. In fact, if you look at the last 2 major releases, there's always new integration capabilities that we're pushing forwards with that platform for our customers, and the reality is like there's still nothing even beginning to be close to the level of depth within the 2 integrations of those systems available in anything else. So. A lot of schools here today, some of them are prospective schools, some of them are assessing both products, and they'll probably vouch for the same, that when you're still looking at those 2 products, there's one obvious choice. When you are a Synergetic school, Schoolbox is still a pretty logical way to go. And yeah, it hasn't really changed anything from the product perspective.
I just thought I'd ask, seeing as you're up there, you're in a powerful position to push positive educational change, which is great, and it's great that that's kind of one of the things you see as being important. So just in the last this morning you talked about gamification, so there's a bit of talk about that in terms of motivational strategies to help students learn. And in the rubric session you talked about, wanting to push schools to use good developmental rubrics so you could track growth and change over time and visually analyse that. Can you share any more things that you would like to see the learning community do better? So I suppose it's getting you to talk more about the most important thing, and that is, teaching and learning in schools and how we can improve that.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. It's a great question. So from my perspective, obviously the rubrics have probably been our big challenge. And we get a lot of questions about how do we get analytics, how do we do curriculum, report against our curriculum and understand our student body. And what I always say back to that is that it's about capturing good data, and doing good assessment practice is really important to the process of capturing good data. And so from our perspective, we are really focused on improving the assessment practice in the learning community so that we can improve the reporting and the analytics that can be done down the track and give you more insights into your professional practice and help you improve your professional practice. So for that's a big part of our push. And last year I spoke at the conference about the idea of the whole student picture, and I sat in on some of the pastoral presentations today, and I think that that's also something I see as a big sort of area for which we can sort of work together to improve the outcomes for students, looking at their whole health and well-being and looking at capturing more information about how are students progressing, what they're doing, how they're performing, not just academically but in sports, in activities. And the badges, it ties into that strategy, is trying to build up a more complete picture of who that student is, to more accurately represent them and make teachers be more like mentors and guides through that process and not so much just a lecturer. So from my perspective, I think there's a lot more we can do in the whole well-being of the student and that capture of that data. Several people today have said to me, Pastoral is a great system because it cuts down on the email. And I'm horrified that all of that information about the student is being lost in inboxes around teachers' computers every day. And that's something that might not seem relevant at the time, but in 6 months that little pastoral note may mean a lot more in the context of something bigger. So I think capturing that data and sharing it and making it visible to all teachers is going to be really important looking forward for Schoolbox, and capturing the badges and the awards alongside that academic data and getting that assessment practice up as well. So they're sort of the three key pillars for me that we see, us improving our practice.
Cool. Well, thank you for your questions, everyone. Would you please give another hand to our directors, Matt, Sean and James. Matt has a question.
What's the current status of our relationship with Atlas Rubicon and the integration?
Thanks, Matt. This question was actually asked this morning, I think. We had a question over here. But for those that, I guess you've been asked this question several times today. Is that what's happening? No, actually. Okay. So for those that don't know the update on that, Atlas Rubicon about 6 months ago built an API for us. So that API is now available. So it's now on us to implement that. We have the curriculum mapping sort of skeleton system inside Schoolbox. There's two parts that need to be improved in Schoolbox. One, we need to be able to map curriculum all the way down to the indicators and the capabilities in your rubrics so that you can actually map them all the way back through your curriculum, back to the outcomes and strands of your curriculum. So we'll be doing that work shortly. Wave to Laurie. We'll be doing that work very soon. The other part of what we'll be working on is the integration of that data. So in Atlas Rubicon, there's a whole lot of curriculum documentation and planning information. We want to connect that in so that you can then link that up with your assessments so that you'll be able to report across the entire curriculum. So that's our long-term goal in terms of that question about how are students progressing across multiple years across the entire curriculum. We're going to build that complete picture by allowing you to map data from your curriculum, your national curriculum or your state curriculum through to your school's custom curriculum stored in Atlas Rubicon, through to Schoolbox's assessments, and down to the capabilities and indicators that you marked on the rubric, and all of that data will then flow back up through the curriculum, so you'll have that continuum of information flow. And so for those that are looking at big data and analytics, there'll be a whole lot of new questions that you can ask of Schoolbox once all of that mapping is completed. Next question.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys.